So how did my wife and I make an over 50% return in the stock market during a global health crisis? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's probably not in the ways you think. Let's talk about it. Hey, I'm Brendan, and every week you're subscribed here, you'll get a free video about the productive use of your time and money. My wife and I made an absurd return in the last year, at least in our Vanguard accounts, and that's what I'll be showing you today. Not so much in my taxable brokerage accounts where I tried to pick some winning stocks. That was a different story. But these other things that we had set up before did really well. Today I'll talk about what happened that led to this potential to have just a massive return. Then I'll talk about what we actually did, and then at the end I'll share our actual portfolio and what we specifically invested in that got us this insane over 50% return. As we all are well aware at this point, a global sickness hit the entire world in the spring of 2020, and it caused one of the fastest, if not the fastest, stock market downturn in history. Basically, overnight, a massive sell-off began as everyone started to anticipate what they thought would happen whenever economies shut down and travel shut down and businesses shut down. And so they just started liquidating their holdings left and right, trying to get out before things went down and causing things to go down even further and even faster until we finally hit a rock bottom point. Everything was just confusing and unpredictable. And in that process, a lot of people talked themselves into making sudden and specific movements in their investments to try and take advantage of any potential recovery that came. I have to admit, I was one of those people. I bought a handful of airline stocks, some mining and energy stocks, and I even bought like $100 worth of crypto, which I almost immediately turned around and sold. And overall, my hunches and my tiny little bit of logic that I put into my decisions wouldn't have been terrible had I actually held on to them for a long time and watched a recovery, but I got too nervous and I sold, and I barely even broke even. Like, it was an exercise in stress more than it was investing. And that's our first mistake for a lot of us who are just normal people who are trying to invest, who are trying to find the best returns. That's timing. We try and forecast when the best times are to sell, and we try and find these little specific windows when we think it makes the most sense. And in the end, after all that movement and after all that stress, we end up doing worse on average than if we had just bought and held an investment over the long term, especially something that's really well diversified to start with. Pains me to remember those days. So while I was struggling and stressed and frantically checking my phone all the time, trying to see if I was up or down, if it was a good time to sell, did I just miss a peak? Oh, what should I do? These other investments that we had were just set on autopilot. They were automatically investing the same amount every month, or they were just sitting there because we already had investments that were ready to go, that had taken a big hit, but they were also poised and ready to rock and roll. Okay, enough talk. Let's get to the evidence and show you the account. As you can see here by this screenshot, we use Vanguard for some of our investments, and this is from their mobile app. This first screenshot is from my Roth IRA, and basically what it's showing us here is our starting balance, which was $33,619. Our purchases and withdrawals was $6,000 because, of course, for a Roth IRA, you can only contribute up to $6,000 per year. And our investment returns were a sweet, delicious, amazing $20,945. So if we do the math on that, that equals a 52.9% return. Wow, wow, wow. As you can see, this time window that I have set up is from April of 2020 to April of 2021. So this is basically going from one of the worst times, not quite the absolute low, to here just recently. Okay, let's move on to another account. This next screenshot is from my traditional IRA account, and that's from April of last year to April of this year, 2021. As you can see, the beginning balance was $10,512. We contributed nothing to it. We didn't touch it. There was no investment made whatsoever, and yet it still grew by $6,058. Now, if we do the math on that, it's even more satisfying because it's a whopping 57% return. Wow, wow, wow. That is insane. That is an absurd return. This is not something that we can expect on the regular, but I am so glad that it actually happened. Wow. And as you can see, this little blue chart goes from April to April and is just sloping up from left to right at an aggressive rate, which I love. Love it when a chart is going from left to right at an aggressive rate. For me, this was a case study in investing, as I took a little bit of our money and I tried to invest it in really particular things that I thought were depressed and were poised to do this big rocketing recovery, and I compared that to this money that was essentially really lazily, boringly invested, where we didn't do anything or we did very little. I got crushed and it did super well. Even though I kind of predicted this to happen, even though I would sit here and I would recommend to you to buy things like index funds, here I am not taking my own advice, not listening to what I think is probably best for most of us. I thought that I was an exception to the rule, and maybe you thought you're there too. Maybe jumping into some crypto or some really specific stocks or some margin or some options trading and these kinds of things where we somehow think that we we have a competitive advantage. We think that we can predict things better than somebody else, and we got to put our money where our mouth is and make a big profit. And man, I just got burned. I hope you don't, but I did. So what are we actually invested in these accounts? For the record, this is not financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. This is just for funsies, just to share my experience. You go do what you want to do after you talk to a professional. My Roth IRA, that first one that got over 52% returns, is invested in just 2 index funds. The first is called VTSAX. Some people pronounce it VTSAX, which sounds funny to me. And that's the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund. That makes up well over 95% of my total Roth IRA portfolio. The rest is in another index fund called VBLAX, and that's the Vanguard Long-Term Bond Index Fund. You can see why they abbreviate these things. And my traditional IRA, which got an even better return, is invested in something even simpler, only one index fund. The laziest possible thing, and that's a target date fund. If you're not familiar, a target date fund is a one-stop investment that automatically takes your money and breaks it up for you based on a date you set out in the future. So for me, this is a retirement account. That's a retirement investment fund. And it basically says, hey, somewhere around the year 2050, you'll be at like typical retirement age. So we're going to optimize this account. Everything in it will be kind of balanced out with that trajectory in mind. And they make that really easy to follow because they put that year that you think you might retire in the name of the fund. VFIFX is the ticker symbol for this fund, and it's called the Vanguard Target Retirement 2050 Fund. As we get closer and closer to the year 2050, it gets just a little bit more conservative every year until it gets way less focused on growth and way more focused on just preserving the money that we have so that we can actually retire. A target date fund like this is the ultimate set it and forget it investment for somebody who doesn't want to fuss over their investments, doesn't want to make a bunch of mistakes like I made, and just set it and let it do its thing. And as you can probably guess, I'm extremely happy with it. Over 57% return, perfect. Awesome. And I had someone recently ask me in a comment if Vanguard is a good place to invest or if it's trustworthy, because like so few people talk about it nowadays compared to all these other investments that she was actually pretty skeptical of it. And in my opinion, Vanguard is still fundamentally an excellent place to invest. The funds are great, their fees are crazy low, and their reputation is basically untarnished compared to a lot of other investment firms nowadays. The only real problem with Vanguard is just the fact that their user interface is like super outdated and it's pretty confusing. The whole process feels pretty confusing. So if you need help, look for step-by-step investing guides for Vanguard because it can be easy to get kind of lost in the middle of like the process. I personally had to actually call customer service and ask them like, hey, what's going on here? Why is my money doing this? Where is it supposed to go? And they walked me through it. So it takes a little bit of understanding, but after that, you learn what you're doing and you can just set it and forget it. One mistake I see people make that I was making myself, and the reason why I had to call them, was whenever you send your money from your bank to Vanguard, it goes in this holding account, this like money market account where it's just kind of like a bank savings account. So it's not been invested in anything. It's not doing anything for you. It's just sitting there. And you have to then go one more step and take that money and actually choose something to buy, they say buy, in the form of an investment. So if you miss out on that one step, you could potentially be sending your money into this account and it can sit there for years and years and do nothing. Like I've heard stories of people who have had their investments going for a decade and they never actually invested the money. So that would be a huge bummer. Do not do that. Check your investments to make sure they're not in a holding account, in a money market account, and make sure they're actually invested. So now you know how we got an insane return. We didn't pick any individual stocks. We did nothing related to blockchain whatsoever. We didn't do any margin lending. We didn't do any options trading. I didn't have to sell any kidneys. It's amazing. And in my opinion, the thing that helped us the most was the fact that we were poised and ready to take advantage of a big market upswing when it finally did come. We had already started investing. It was impossible for us to miss an upswing because the money was there and it was ready to rock. Having that already in place and already invested saved us from having to have perfect timing that I obviously can't figure out anyway. If I had to give non-investing, purely entertainment advice to anybody who's looking to get started investing, it would be, hey, don't worry about getting everything perfect right off the bat. Just start. Get yourself in the game. Get yourself to a place where you're poised to take advantage of things whenever good stuff happens and figure things out as you go. If you're looking for an investing app to use to get started with, I made this video a little while back that's apparently really popular. Apparently it helps people because it's had over 315,000 views. reviews, 11,000 likes, and people leave really friendly comments all the time. And it's called the best investing apps for beginners in 2021. I'll link that in the description so that you can find it really easy and get started. Also, if you're interested in seeing some of the behind the scenes things that happen here, or seeing more daily content, or seeing the update on my ultramarathon training, like I'm gonna be riding this exercise bike here as soon as this video is done, then you can follow me on Instagram at Brendan Fitness and Money. That's also linked in the description. So feel free to follow me there and be a part of it there. That's also where the beautiful pictures of mountain sunrise and rolling hills and desert trails and saguaros are. So if you like nature photos, that's where those are too. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you soon. Bye. This place feels like I'm about to be ambushed in a Star Wars movie. Maybe all the little aliens come out and raid my body for electronics.